Hi, this is Stephanie Lotvin of Tellybean Knits, and today I want to show you how I weave in the ends for color 5 and the beginning of color 1 on clue 5 of the Witch's Brew. So at the end of joining in the round for your Witch's Brew mystery knit along, there is often a gap between the two ends of your cowl that were worked flat when you join in the round. You have two pieces of yarn that come out near that join. One is a color 5 and one is a color 1. And I want to show you how I weave those two ends in. So if you have not completed clue 5, then do not watch this video. This video should not be watched until you have completed clues 1 through 5 of the cowl, because I am going to show the cowl in progress in this video. So stop the video now. Spoiler alert, I will show clues 1 through 5 in this video. Once you finish clue 5, come back and you can watch this video for how to weave in those ends. You're going to need a tapestry needle and a pair of scissors. There are lots and lots of ways to weave in ends, and I'm going to show you a few of the ways that I weave in ends. I don't think that there is one great way to weave in ends. I think there are lots of ways to weave in ends, and every project is a puzzle. Now, the goal that I have any time that I'm weaving in ends is to make sure that any ends that I weave in on the wrong side of my work do not show on the right side of my work. And I think that should be your goal as well. But that is the only rule, in my opinion. The wrong side of your work is a playground for weaving in ends. As long as the way that you weave in ends holds, for me, the way that it looks is not as critical as how secure the ends are when you're weaving them in. If you feel that there are strict rules for weaving in ends, this video just might not be for you, because in my opinion, rules, they're for other people. For me, I like the adventure. I'm going to show you several different techniques that I use, and if you use something different, something that works better for you, I support you. Do what works best for you and what you feel the most confident about. Okay, now is your chance to turn off the video one last time before I show clues 1 through 5 of the Witch's Brew. Okay, here we go. I've got the wrong side of my work facing me right now. I'm going to just zoom out so you can see. So right now you're just looking at the wrong side of the work, which is, I have to say, really, really cool looking. But I have joined this cowl in the round. I did that during clue 5. And there are some ends that I've already started to weave in, but a couple of important ends that I think that there are going to be questions about, and I thought it would be helpful to show you how I weave those ends in. To begin, you need to put your yarn on a tapestry needle. When you are weaving in your ends at the join, you can see that there's a little bit of gapping here. That's okay, it happens. We're going to use our ends to reinforce this place where the two ends of our cowl that were worked flat came together when we joined to knit in the round. I'm going to start by weaving in the end for color 1. So I have color 1 on my tapestry needle. I have my end ready to go, and I'm just going to weave that end in. Again, if you do this differently and you find a method that works better for you, that is perfectly fine. So the way that I'm going to weave this end in is I'm going to follow the stitches coming across the point of my cowl just below where the color 5 join is. So I'm just going to follow those stitches. This might be one of the trickier things I've ever tried to do with a camera in front of my face, so forgive me if it's a little awkward. So I'm just following the stitches. You can see as they work their way down the cowl. essentially I'm duplicating those color 1 stitches with my tail from color 1. And I do this for, I would say, about an inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch to an inch, or 2.5 centimeters. So you can see I've followed the color 1 stitches to duplicate those. And now the way that I reinforce this, and this is something I commonly do in projects that do not have stranded color work. So this is a section where I can easily see the stitches in color 1, and I'm not yet to a point where I need to deal with floats, and so I was able to follow those stitches. What I actually do is I take the end of my tapestry needle, and I tend to use a pretty sharp tapestry needle and a pretty fine needle, and I actually go back and I split the stitches that I have duplicated. So there's a row of along the bottom here where I have worked the bottom part of that stitch has been duplicated, and I'm going to use my tapestry needle and I'm going to split a little bit of the stitch that I just duplicated and the stitch that was there before. So the tail yarn and the stitch I duplicated gets split. I don't know if you can see. Let's see. See that I'm splitting that stitch and putting my tapestry needle through a little bit of both of those stitches. And what this is doing is this is locking that yarn in place. Once I come back through that duplicated stitch and the tail it makes it so it has a very hard time coming back out, loosening up and coming undone. And then I do the same thing along this top edge. So I use the tail to run a duplicate stitch along the top edge here. That's where I was following the stitches. And I'm going to use my tapestry needle to split a little bit of each of those plies from the tail and the duplicated stitch with my tapestry needle. I've done about 4 of those stitches here, and you can see just split those little. Let me show you on the right side of the work. You can't see the needle showing through on the right side of the work or the yarn. I always check actually on the right side of the work. While the needle is still in place, I can see shiny parts where, so it would be right here. You can see a little bit of shine where there's holes gapping. That's just a little bit of the needle, but not the actual where I'm actually running the needle through the stitches. And then I pull that through to reinforce where I've sewn in. And now I like to snip my yarn. And at this point, I leave a fair amount of the tail in place. You can see there's about 1/2 inch, maybe even a longer here. And then I use the tip of my tapestry needle to fray that so that there's even less chance that that will come undone. And it gives me the ability, if I need to be aggressive during blocking, to tug on that, and it's less likely to pull completely out whenever it is being blocked if I decide I need to block aggressively, but that helps lock it in place. And then that little extra frayed yarn is going to make it so it's even harder for it to slip out. I work with a lot of superwash yarn, which is quite slippery, so I do a lot of, I feel like a little extra work whenever I'm weaving in ends so that there's no chance that that's going to come undone and anything is going to pop through to the right side of my work. Okay, now that I've woven in color 1, you can see here's where I've woven in color 1. You can't see where I've woven in my ends on the right side of my work. I'm ready to weave in color 5. So I'm just going to put color 5 on my knitting needle, or I'm sorry, on my tapestry needle. And I'm ready to weave in that end. Right now, my end is coming from the right side of my work. I'm just going to turn this around so you can see. Right now it's coming from the right side of my work. That probably just depends for you on where you dropped your yarn or left it whenever you finished the last round in color 5, whether it's on the right side of your work or the wrong side of your work, I'm going to suggest you bring it to the wrong side of your work. Now, I essentially want to close this loop that I have right here, this longer loop. And what I'm going to do is I want to make sure, I want to follow that loop around to the other side. So I'm going to follow that loop, and there's several places you could put your yarn. I'm going to come up to this point. This is my rounded edge, and I'm going to try to catch 2 legs of a stitch. I'm going to bring that through. So now I've come through to the wrong side of my work. And then I'm going to follow this yarn across the join. So this gap between the one side of my cowl and the other, where this length of yarn is, I'm going to follow that down. And I'm going to pull that closed. And now I want to come to the back of my work. So I'm going to insert my needle, keep following that stitch to the wrong side of my work. And I'm just going to pull that through to the wrong side of my work. And now I'm going to flip this over so that the wrong side of my work is showing. Let's see where I am. If you can focus there. Okay. And now I would like to have a little extra security in that stitch, in that the gap that was happening between those 2 edges. And so I'm going to keep following this loop back up, because I would like to come back across what was the gap before, just because I know that I'm going to be pulling this over my head, and I would like to close that gap and reinforce it as much as possible. So I followed this yarn up, and now I'm going to come back behind 2 legs here. And then I'm going to come back across this gap. I'm going to go through the center of this stitch. And now I'm going to come back down. I would like to work, now that I've closed that gap, I would like to work along the edge where color 1 and color 5 meet, in order to essentially do what I had done with color 1. I worked in color 1 this direction to weave in the end, and now I want to come back to where color 5 and color 1 meet, and I'm going to work in this direction to finish weaving in my ends. So I'm coming back down, following the yarn. And as I mentioned before, this is not an exact science. So do what feels best while you're working on this. So now I'm going to follow my yellow yarn, the color 5 yarn, in to the left. I'm just duplicating the stitches that are running along the edge of where color 5, the yellow, and color 1, the white, meet. And when I duplicate those stitches, my color 5 will come back onto the right side of my work, but because it's following a color 5 stitch, you won't notice that it's coming to the right side of my work. It's only whenever I have a contrasting color on the right side of the work that I want to be careful that it doesn't show on the right side of my work. All right, I followed the stitches, the color 5 stitches, about an inch or 2.5 centimeters. And now I'm just going to do what I did before, which was to come back across this, split a little bit of the duplicated stitch and the tail with my tapestry yarn, or with my tapestry needle. to help secure that yarn in place. So I've worked across the bottom edge. I'm going to give that a little stretch so that it has a little room to grow whenever it's blocked. And then I'm going to come back across the stitches that I duplicated at the top of the edge of where I've woven in my ends. And split those stitches. You can see here I have some feathery tails from where I've cut that yarn color 2 previously, and I've left some quite long fringy tails on these, and that is because I want to be able to really stretch whenever I am blocking later without any risk that that's going to pop through to the front. And I can always trim those tails later. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to give this a gentle tug to make sure that I have some extra yarn in place for when I'm blocking. And then I'm going to cut that tail. I'm going to give this one a little extra length. It's closer to 1 inch. And then I'm just going to use my tapestry needle to fray those plies so that when I block that later, it's less likely to pop through to the right side of my work or pop out from where I've woven in the ends. And now I've secured that join and closed that loop. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you so much for watching.